It's a strange feeling when you consider yourself an avid fan of a series, and then you figure out that there's a spin-off that's nearly 40 chapters in. And you might be feeling that way right now, because I'm talking about My Hero Academia Vigilantes, or Illegals, depending on who you're talking to. Vigilantes is a spin-off and prequel to My Hero, and most of us at GetintheRobot just found out that it exists.
I knew about it.
Except for Adrian. Apparently he knew.
What?
Let's start with the basics. My Hero Academia Vigilantes takes place at least a couple years before Deku starts at UA. The manga has been running in Shonen Jump affiliated publications since August 2016, but the official English translation from Viz didn't launch until July 2018, as in a few months ago. And there's only been 2 physical volumes released in English, so don't worry, you haven't been totally sleeping on this one. The mangaka is not Kohei Horikoshi, the man behind My Hero. Vigilantes is written by Hideyuki Furuhashi and illustrated by Betancourt. There's not a Vigilantes anime yet, nor, as of this recording, have any plans been announced to bring the series to the screen. The series centers around Koichi Haimawari, aka the Crawler, as he serves justice from the shadows with the aid of his allies, a crusty older dude named Knuckle Duster, and a sassy high schooler called Popstep. The big difference is that no one in this trio is a licensed hero. They're all doing hero work illegally as vigilantes. Their work largely revolves around taking care of villains who spontaneously appear due to a quirk-enhancing drug called Trigger. That mention of Trigger may have piqued your interest if you're reading the My Hero manga. So let's look at how Vigilantes differs from My Hero Academia. Sure, Vigilantes and My Hero exist in the same country within a few years of each other and even share the occasional character. We'll get to that in a second. But the most interesting aspect of Vigilantes is that for anyone fascinated by the world My Hero Academia takes place in, Vigilantes offers a view of this quirk-ridden society from a drastically different angle. And personally, that's what I'm most interested in. I want to hear about the guy whose quirk is goop and just has to deal with being a goop lord for the rest of his life. I want to know about the UA rejects, the people who aren't so into the whole superhero thing. And while Vigilantes doesn't answer all of those questions, it at least offers a different viewpoint on the whole society of heroes thing. So, long story short, if you thought that Stain guy made some valid points, Vigilantes might be for you. First of all, as the title suggests, none of the protagonists are pro-heroes. They don't even have hero training. The main character, Koichi, is in college for sociology after, okay, spoilers maybe, missing the entrance exam for a hero high school years ago. Kazuho, aka Popstep, and even the teenage villain just go to standard, run-of-the-mill high schools. So they are missing out on having a homeroom teacher who slugs around in a sleeping bag all the time. But they also don't have to constantly risk life and limb just because it's midterms and the teachers thought it'd be cool to stick a bunch of killer robots on their students. Again, if the UA student and faculty body we're so accustomed to are the elite, here are a bunch of normal civilians just like you and me. Because, come on, let's be real, what's the chance we'd be an All Might, or even a Mineta? If I'm in hero school at all, I'm probably that chick who can pull out her eyeballs, which could be useful in a hot spring situation. From this new normal person angle, using your quirk isn't celebrated if you're not a pro hero. In fact, we're told in the very first chapter that it's actually against the law to use your quirk on a public street, and that's just to slide to work. So imagine how illegal it would be to don a costume and fight using your quirk without a license. Let's make this absolutely clear. Vigilantes exist entirely outside the law and completely without the blessing of the police. Sorry, boy. The series even makes a point early on, having a police officer say that even though Crawler and company did the police a favor by taking down a villain, there's no way the police could condone their work. Vigilantism is a crime. In other words, in the eyes of police and even the pros, vigilantes and villains exist on the same side of the law. There's no legitimacy for our protagonists here. This is a world where at the end of the day, the good guys are also running away from the cops and could also get arrested. Anyone else getting One Piece vibes? I don't know about you, but I love a subversive hero. I mean, sure, it takes guts to make it through UA's training, but arguably it takes way more resolve to adhere to your own moral code, especially when it requires you to break the law. Don't quote me on that. But what can I say? I'm all about heroes fighting the powers that be. Sometimes the government doesn't have your best interest in mind. And as much as I'd love to be an Ida or a Deku with unwavering belief in our institutions, I'm just not. And neither are the stars of Vigilantes. Pretty drastic difference to the world we're used to, huh? If UA is on some high-up privileged hill where quirk use is encouraged, these are very literally the gritty streets. Which means the fights aren't quite as glamorous on the whole either. As the series goes on, the fights get bigger and longer, but it starts off on a kind of episodic vibe, like Ninja Turtles or something. And that's the baseline vibe it returns to between climaxes. In fact, with the exception of big baddies like Kuin and her mystery boss, we're not dealing dealing as often with take over the world type villains. Although the big baddies certainly provide the crux of the arcs, we see a lot of spontaneous villains due to trigger, and more random street crimes. So many Batman vibes. If we're talking about vibes, am I overusing the word vibes yet? As for the motives of the protagonist, Koichi, he started off super small time as nice guy, just helping people find lost wallets and stuff, and Popstep likes justice and all, but her main drive is becoming a pop idol. And then there's the last member of the trio, Knuckle Duster. Mysterious past aside, you get the sense he just loves the rumble, and oh yeah, he's secretly quirkless. That's a minor spoiler, but it bears repeating. The most combat-intensive character in the beginning of this series is quirkless. In the pro-level world of My Hero, Deku had no real future when he didn't have a quirk. But here's this middle-aged dude beating the cojones out of villains racked up on trigger. Sure, he's got some interestingly obtained gadgets that help him out sometimes, but the point still stands. I assume they were pretty much treated like squibs, which is to say, badly. It's cool to see Knuckle Duster being a hero the old-fashioned way, by punching bad guys. And I might be alone in this, but I don't want him to get a Saitama-style shonen glow-up. I'd rather he just be his badass, quirkless self. Vigilantes is almost like a belated response to Deku's question to All Might in the very beginning of My Hero Academia. Can you be a hero without a quirk? The answer is still no, not really. But you can be a vigilante. You don't necessarily have to have a good quirk in Vigilantes either. Popstep's bounce is like Uraraka's zero gravity with gigantic limitations. These aren't characters who would have gotten into UA. I mean, come on, a handful of the villains here need trigger in order to cause havoc. Luckily, you don't have to have an amazing quirk to get into our anime club. Just sign up for our mailing list at GetintheRobot TV. But this video is about Vigilantes, so let's get back to My Hero's goth twin. There's some pretty major tone differences between Vigilante and My Hero. For one, Koichi is 19 and in college. We're dealing with someone with his own place and a job who's a bit more mature than, say, Mineta. Sorry to pick Mineta again, but it's true. Unlike My Hero, school definitely isn't the focus of this series. If it were, we'd be tailing Koichi's hero sociology class, which might actually be pretty interesting. Also, we're in Tokyo for Vigilantes, and it's stated multiple times that Koichi lives in a rundown neighborhood. Yue and Deku's apartments seem like they're in a small town or a suburb or something. Vigilantes is unmistakably about city life. All in all, Vigilantes is rightfully called the darker series. In particular, there's a storyline involving possession that's superbly messed up, and with an older cast, we get some more adult content, which isn't always tastefully done. But we can summarize the difference with one genre-appropriate metaphor. My Hero is the clean-cut, natural-born, daylight-roving Superman. Vigilantes is the gritty, do-it-yourself Batman under the cover of night. Yeah, you can tell which one of these two is my favorite. I'm Batman. Now that I've convinced you that Vigilantes is pretty darn different from My Hero, I can divulge that there are actually overlap between the two. As I said earlier, Vigilantes takes place some years before the events in My Hero. There's a lot of solid evidence for this. The biggest and least spoilery being that Eraserhead and Midnight both seem to be full-time heroes. In other words, they don't work at UA yet. So yes, some heroes from My Hero, a few pros and one central figure, pop up in Vigilantes. Joyously, the hero that gets the most face time is Eraserhead. We also get quite a few appearances from Midnight, and Present Mike pops up as well, so you should definitely check it out. Ingenium makes some prominent cameos too, which is nice, and a little sad because of the future. But those stories don't really relate back to My Hero, they're just fun recontextualizations. However, the relatively early on storyline featuring this other central figure is basically an origin story. Does it change My Hero? No. Does it provide some pretty interesting context to a very important character? Yes. Giran pops up too. Don't want to tell you how though. Also, one of the central characters of Vigilantes is Makoto Tsukauchi. As fans with razor-sharp memories might guess, Makoto is the sister of Naomasa Tsukauchi, the police detective who's buddies with All Might. Naturally, he also pops up a few times. That rabid Tsukauchi fanbase better get ready. As of yet, the crossover hasn't worked in the other direction. Vigilantes characters haven't popped up in My Hero. However, Vigilantes introduced Trigger before My Hero did. So in this one sense, Vigilantes beat My Hero to the punch. In the My Hero anime, we're actually about to enter the arc where Trigger is introduced. But that also happens to be the longest arc to date at a whopping 41 chapters, so you'll still have to wait a second. It's interesting to ponder whether Trigger could be the vehicle through which Vigilantes' world eventually makes itself known in My Hero. But let's move on. Alright, it's time for me to be straight with you. While it thankfully grows into its own, the first couple of volumes of Vigilantes are rough. largely because of the treatment of Pop Step. One of the reasons I love My Hero is because half of Deku's classmates are talented, competent, and formidable women. Sure, there's room for improvement, and I wish Momo or Tsu would get a good hit in next time there's a final boss battle, but on the whole, I'd give My Hero a solid B+ for its treatment of women. I'd probably give the first chapters of Vigilantes a D-. In 4 out of the first 4 chapters, Pop, the only female vigilante or character at this point, needs some kind of rescuing, and 2 out of those 4 times, she's in real danger of getting sexually assaulted. One guy is straight up going to rape her and then take a video of her naked. In chapter 4, a monster guy tries to force her to kiss him. If that sounds bad, it is. I could talk about this at length, but I'll just say that there are more ways to establish a dark, gritty tone than victimizing the high school girl and not giving the aftermath of sexual assault the gravity it deserves. Pop later calls the first villain the rape and murder man and says to let sleeping dogs lie. Plus, before the forced kiss scenario, Knuckle Duster disturbingly suggests that Pop let the villain grope her ass. Hey, I read manga and watch anime to escape real life, not to have its grimmest realities thrown in my face. But I guess it at least speaks to how pervasive in real life sexual assault is, and how often these crimes are swept under the rug, even by those who are supposed to be punishing abusers, like, even in a manga that is meant for kids. I mean, should we really be teaching the children to ignore sexual assault? Come on! But thank God, the series gets better. More female characters are introduced, including a cool female villain who's Pop's age. We unnecessarily see her bra in a spoilery context, but yeah. Look, I mean, I enjoy Free, so I also fall for the fan service lure, don't get me wrong, but okay, that's a topic for a whole other video. More importantly, we graduate from victimizing Pop every volume, sexually or otherwise. She's still never really the action agent of Vigilantes missions, but she's debatably the most interesting character in the series. So what's the verdict? Vigilantes takes a second to kick in. It takes a while for it to find its own identity from the mothership, and of course, there's a lot of cringe in the first 6 chapters if we include the bit about respecting people's fetishes in regards to villains stealing used women's underwear. I mean, at least in Ranma half, everyone knew Haposai's habit was not appropriate. But to give you a sense of how the series improves, these guys show up 20 chapters later and steal men's underwear too. Progress! There's even male nudity in that one. And then a villain who wants to grope women. It's a process, guys. Admittedly, it took a lot of mental effort for me to cleanse myself of the cringe in those few chapters, and it's understandable if some of you can't shake that off. But if you start at, say, chapter 7, Vigilantes becomes an interesting, engaging series whose drastically different take on the world of My Hero makes it worth at least a look-see for the curious. Plus, all the non-cringe chapters are available on Viz for free right now. I'm Cristal Marie, and thanks for watching GetintheRobot, your anime explainer.